if the Volksstaat is understood as an internationally recognized independent Afrikaner state in the Northern Cape, then the project is arguably further from realization today than it was in 1994.
Is the dream for an independent, self-governing Afrikaner Volksstaat dead, more than 30 years after the end of apartheid? Not entirely, says my guest Thomas van Dalen, chairman of AfriForum's Training Forum, who recently wrote a compelling article for Marula Media titled From a Geographic Dream, that is the Volksstaat ideal, to a network of communities, the ideal for the Afrikaner, of the ideal of the Afrikaner. Today we'll explore the post-apartheid aspirations of many Afrikaners to create a Volksstaat in South Africa, how that vision has evolved, whether it can still be realized, and what it looks like in today's reality. Thomas van Dalen, you write about functional self-determination. Welcome to the program.
Thank you very much, Johan. It's a pleasure being here.
Yeah, you just told me that you sit in Orania.
Yes, that is correct. I'm right in the center of the country, in the Northern Cape, or right on the eastern side of the Northern Cape in Orania. And it's interesting, as it is the most central point of South Africa. And we can see the aeroplanes flying over us on a daily basis, sometimes within 15 or 20 minutes, 4 or 5 airplanes flying to and fro from the Cape. So we see everything, yeah.
We're going to talk about that, and we're going to talk about Orania as well. But first and foremost, you work for AfriForum. So just tell us, what do you do for AfriForum? And then I'd like to know, what is your particular interest in the subject that we're discussing today, the Afrikaner Volksstaat?
Firstly, I am the head of training for AfriForum. That's basically my main function.
That's very broad. Training, what does that mean?
That includes all training. That includes functional training as well as personnel development. So I develop and I roll out all training. Obviously, community safety training is a big thing at this stage for us. So I write all the programs, I develop the programs, I start off the training programs, and then I hand it over to one of the regional heads and they carry on with their training. So that's basically that. And then I'm involved, obviously, with personnel development, writing and presenting all types of training, leadership training, and so forth. So that's basically what I do. That's the first thing. And then secondly, as an additional task, I am the head of the Northern Cape for AfriForum. So I run the Northern Cape on their behalf.
And your particular interest in the subject of the Afrikaner Volksstaat?
Well, in 2015, AfriForum and the Solidarity Movement had a national congress in Bella Bella, or the old Warmbad as we know it. And then the Afrikaner self-determination, or the Volksstaat, was put on the map by various people, specifically from Orania and Solidariteit. I remember at that stage it was Flip Buys and Professor Malan and a few other guys. And then Frans de Klerk obviously was the main party from Orania, and they laid it on the table and they explained the Afrikaner Volksstaat idea to all the delegates. That was the first. And then secondly, obviously, Johan, it's to just start a Volksstaat is not going to happen overnight. It's a 70, 80, 90 years development, maybe if it comes to that, if not even longer. Then obviously there's certain other factors that influence it. So, if it's going to happen, if it's not going to happen, I think that's up to the future.
Yeah.
But in the meantime, we have to do certain actions or execute certain actions to be able to work towards such a Volksstaat, whether it be a real Volksstaat in a specifically or a specific geographical area, or be
Yeah.
a as AfriForum and Solidariteit is rolling it out at this stage as a type of an interim goals to achieve it eventually.
Are you saying with that, Thomas, that the concept of creating a Volksstaat, whatever that Volksstaat might look like, is something that the solidarity movement is part of their project?
Yes, it's definitely part of it. As I say, if it's really going to be a geographical type of thing, or if it's going to be a system of networks, that obviously is still a toss-up. We are working towards a network of centers of excellence or pockets of excellence as we are currently rolling it out. For the simple reason that all Afrikaners do not find themselves in a specific area. They are spread out across the country. So what we've basically done is we went and we did research to find out where are the Afrikaners located in the country. And there's about 35 of these centers across the country where we get involved. And we basically what we do is the fourth government sphere is what we are creating. In other words, the government is not really able to execute their duties properly regarding schools, regarding water, regarding electricity, good governance or municipal governance. And that is where we come in. We have our branches in that area, and we've got certain actions that we then execute to make this better for the people living in the area. And obviously, it's not only Afrikaners that are really reap the benefit of it. It's all people living in the area, whether you be English, Afrikaans, Zulu, Xhosa, doesn't matter. Everybody reaps the benefits of it.
You know, I'm going to apologize in advance because maybe I have got it wrong. Maybe I am not informed well enough, but I've never heard Flip Base or Kali Kriel or anybody from AfriForum or from Solidarity saying it as explicitly as what you're saying now, that we as an organization are working towards the creation of a Volksstaat. That's not defining what it means. The word actually means itself. But I've never heard Flip Base or Kali really saying it as directly as what you're saying here.
I think it's very implied because, as you know, the Volksstaat idea remains a very misunderstood and controversial idea in the South African political landscape. Because for some people, it remains a symbol of isolation and nostalgia, obviously. For others, it's the only realistic way for Afrikaners to protect their language, their culture, the community institutions in the long term, and so forth. So I don't think it's really the Volksstaat eventually. That is what we hope in achieving, but it will not be in my time, most probably not even in our children or our grandchildren's time. But that's what eventually we are working towards. And as I say, you know, it's a toss-up. Is it really going to happen? I think that is why we are reluctant to literally throw it out there and say we are going for the Volksstaat. And our idea of the Volksstaat at this stage is more, as I said in the article, a network of communities.
Let's just start the conversation here. Do you believe that there are still today, 30 years post-apartheid, Afrikaners who yearn for self-governance or for independence or a homeland of sorts?
Yes, it's definitely alive and well at this stage. I don't think it's as big as we or one would have hoped it to be, but there's definitely, I mean, I am on several groups where Afrikaners are on the groups. And, that's why I wrote the article, because we've literally got these guys talking about the Volksstaat idea. And basically, a lot of them has a misconception about the Volksstaat idea. There's a lot of them that thinks it's something that is going to happen tomorrow morning. And it's definitely not going to happen. And definitely not as they would have thought or they would have hoped it for to happen the way that they wanted.
Well, let me tell you that when I read your article, Thomas, from a geographic dream to a network of communities, I must confess that I concluded for myself that the idea or the dream of many Afrikaners for 'n Volksstaat is pretty much dead.
It's not really.
I suppose, let me qualify that. I suppose I talk about the physical Volksstaat now, a geographic Volksstaat, a piece of land. That sounds to me, when I read your article, that sounds to me like that's not going to happen.
I think for the immediate, yes, definitely, it's not going to happen. And as you very well know, if you refer to the Section 235 of our Constitution, you would understand that it was written in by the Vryheidsfront at that stage, General Viljoen and so forth, because Section 235 explicitly provides that the right to self-determination of any community sharing a common cultural and linguistic heritage may be recognized through national legislation. Now, with specific reference to Afrikaners, self-determination would not necessarily mean pursuing an independent state. In practice, it could manifest through various ways. Firstly, it goes about the protection and the promotion of our mother language, in this case Afrikaans, as a language of instruction and public life. Secondly, it's about creating independent Afrikaans schools, universities and training institutions. You might very well know that we are building the 3.2 billion rand, almost said a dollar, billion rand university outside Pretoria. Then we have started building schools, the gymnasium schools, which is private Afrikaans institutions. We've got Saltec and so forth. And then it goes about the cultural organizations that promote Afrikaner history, heritage and art. As you know, the Federasie van Afrikaanse Kultuurverenigingen, the FAK, runs the Voortrekker Monument. And so it carries on. There's other monuments as well. Then it goes about self-governments or greater municipal autonomy, which I write about in the article, where communities democratically support it. What we do is we've got these, what we call buurtspanne. So in each of the anchor communities, what we call it, this is the 35 pockets of excellence. We started off with branches, and these guys clean the parks themselves. They mow the lawns of the parks and next to the streets. So what we are doing is to formalize it and getting a guy or two guys into a vehicle, a light delivery vehicle with a small trailer and all types of equipment. So what they then do is they get paid on a monthly basis and they do all these projects. If there's a tender from the municipality, we are then able to request to be able to be a party to that tender. If we win the tender, obviously we get paid by the municipality. As you know, the municipalities are getting more and more dysfunctional in South Africa. So they are too glad that someone is willing to do this type of work. That's the first thing. And secondly, they put out tenders everywhere and for everybody. And then obviously the last thing I think is economic and social institutions built and managed by the community itself. Obviously, it has to operate within the Constitution and it has to respect the rights of other South Africans, which is extremely important.
Is this driven, this idea of going it alone or self-governance, is that based on the failures of the African National Congress, the incredible collapse of infrastructure in South Africa, of the country as a whole, or is it something that is part of our own identity? Are we born with a kind of a freedom gene?
Yeah, I think it's a mixture of all three, um, which it's a very difficult question to answer with one answer. It's of all three. I think it has a lot to do with our genes, but it definitely has a lot to do with what is happening in the country, governing wise, with the ANC. The infighting, with the municipalities completely collapsing. I think this is a political reality that really has led to a remarkable evolution in the concept of this Volksstaat over the past 15, maybe 30 years. The focus was, previously on borders and sovereignty. Now it's much greater emphasis on functional self-determination, the word that I previously used in the
Yeah.
piece that I wrote. The premise is simple. The stronger the community's own institutions are, the less dependent it is on a state that often struggles to deliver basic services. And I think that the support we are gaining from not only Afrikaners, from English-speaking people, from the Zulus, I think that the Xhosa maybe not as much because they are very ANC-oriented as well. But if you look at the Ngonyama Trust of the Zulu King, which is basically a Volksstaat idea. They want to self-govern them. In fact, the Zulu King has recently proclaimed about a week ago that he basically wants the whole of KwaZulu-Natal that he can govern over. And there's really big disputes going on there. And recently we also did a poll. Or let me start off. Let me rewind a little. About 5 years ago, we did a poll where that is the Solidarity Movement. Did a poll where we asked people, "Do you identify as an Afrikaner?" And about 38% of the respondents said yes, they do identify as Afrikaners. The latest one, which was done under almost the same 5,000 people, the poll came out as about 85%, I think, if I remember correctly, 85, 86%, people that identify as Afrikaners. And with that, obviously comes the idea of we are sick and tired of being governed by the ANC being the minority, the 8-9% minority, but paying 90% of taxes in the country, and what we get only 5% maybe of the benefit of it. And this is with regards to everything. It's if you as a white person applies for a job, you have a 5% chance of getting in because of the whole BEE and BBEE and so forth, all those funny acronyms that they use.
Yeah. Can we for a moment go back into the history of the idea of the Volksstaat for a moment? I don't know how informed or not informed you are about it, but when organizations like the I think Afrikaner Vryheidsstichting was part of the Volksfront, later the Freedom Front Plus, people like Karel Boshoff, General Constantine, your name you mentioned already, Dr. Peter Mulder, when they came together in the 1990s to create this idea of, in fact, they created 235, but when they created the idea of a Volksstaat, what was the initial idea? Was it to get a geographical space of land to establish a Volksstaat, or was it also an idea that was just evolving at the time?
ultimate idea was to develop a territorial area where Afrikaners could democratically manage their own local government and institutions. In that, the Northern Cape emerged as the most suitable region, given its vast territory, the low population density, the strong Afrikaner identity or character. If you go to Kimberley, and we do that quite often, almost once a week, uh, everybody speaks Afrikaans. Even the black people, the colored people, and from where we come in the Western Cape, the colored people speak English because it's a certain sign of distinction if you are able to speak English. In the Northern Cape, it's really not like that. All colors speak Afrikaans, and you start off because you're so used to speaking English in the Western Cape, and then for someone, say for instance, the cashier at the till, which is a black lady, you speak English to her, and then she says, "No, man, kom ons praat Afrikaans. Let's speak Afrikaans."
What is the real dream here? This functional Volksstaat, as a functional self-determination that you talk about, or the creation of this physical piece of land?
Yeah, that's basically the two directions that people are moving in. You still have the Orania team and quite a number of people supporting them that says it's a geographical area. And that's why I say if Orania is the central point or the growth node of the Volksstaat idea, then it will be most probably the Northern Cape area. And that dream is very much alive in specifically Orania. And they are looking obviously towards a type of a corridor towards the sea. But we all know what is to be able, or self-determination. There's quite a number of factors that influences self-determination, which is other people or people of other ethnicities that is involved. And then once again, in that dream, you have the two schools again that split up again, that says it's no problem as long as we are the majority in that specific area, then we do have self-determination. On the other hand, you have the group that says no, it must only be people of our own race, our own language that occupies this area, which makes it a very difficult, and I'm not saying unrealistic at this stage, because we never know what the future will or what will happen in the future.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
that is on the one side, and that's why I say there's a political reality. The focus was on borders, sovereignty, and so forth. Now it's more on functional self-determination as solidarity strategy of building independent schools, training institutions, universities, cultural organizations, and so forth. So the premise with this is simple. The stronger a community's own institutions are, the less dependent it is on a state that often, as we see it, struggles to deliver basic services. And that is where AfriForum has decided to go along with the anchor community strategy, which aligns closely with this approach of solidarity. So instead of immediately striving for political independence, the focus is on developing stronger local communities that foster safety, economic growth, local governance, and then obviously civic responsibility, because people will, as a whole in a community, has to take responsibility for themselves. And Orania is at this stage within to answer you on the Orania, is within our strategy. It's regarded as one of these anchor communities. Though certainly not the only one. As I say, we've got 35 of these anchor communities.
Can you help define the anchor communities for me? Mention some names of towns or cities so I can get an idea. Where are these anchor communities, and what do you mean when you say anchor communities? Anchored to what?
Basically, what it means is we've, as I say, about 11, 12 years ago, the Solidarity went and they did a poll to determine where the most Afrikaners reside in the country, where's the biggest concentration of Afrikaners. And that is where we got to these 35 anchor communities. Just to give you an idea, obviously Pretoria is one, and surrounding regions, the East Rand specifically. In the Northern Cape, it's Uppington, Kuruman and Kathu, Kimberley, and then obviously the Bo-Karoo, which includes De Aar, Orania, Hopetown, Prieska, all these surrounding towns. And then you might as well, or you can even go as far as Koffiefontein, Philippolis, and then maybe some of the, more the southeastern or the southwestern Free State towns.
Are these anchor communities, Thomas, are they connected? Or are we, in my mind, I see a kind of almost a Bophuthatswana of Afrikaner Volksstaat? Are they connected? How are they connected?
Yeah, that's quite a long process to get them connected. And the first way of getting, or the best way to getting them connected is through community safety. Because, that's at this stage in South Africa, as you know, we are amongst one of the top 3 most dangerous countries in the world. With about 70 to 75 murders per 24 hours. So community safety has a lot to do with that. And within the community safety environment, we link these towns together with a specific concept that we use. And so what they are we connect them with radios, firstly, good communication. So each of these communities can speak to each other. They are able to assist each other if they do have a problem in that specific area. Then we've got a center point, which we call a community safety center, a CSC, where there's a central control room with the ability to speak to everybody who has a radio. That's the first thing. Secondly, there's 2 dedicated telephone lines within the community center or safety center that people can phone in from anywhere, and we can assist them because we've got a database within that community safety center where we can assist them with any type of problem that they have, be it an ambulance that they need or a security company because they've got something happening, some type of incident. We can send out a tow truck to that specific incident. And it is also nationally connected, these centers with each other, with radios and telephones. And then obviously there's a dual system. Because the one system, which is a very good system, a radio system, works on cell phone technology. So it's a 2-way radio, but it has a SIM card in it. But if something happens and the cell towers are cut, then you don't have communication. So we have the VHF radio systems as well. So you don't need cell phone communication for that. So that is the way that we are busy connecting them to each other. Yes.
But if I'm to understand the anchor communities, if I have a map in front of me, are these communities that you have identified that are in fact cooperating with one another, working together, do they form one unit at the end of the day?
I don't think they'll ever specifically form one unit. No, no, it won't
So it's
happen.
not one geographical space of land that one can
No.
say this is Afrikaner
Yeah,
land.
no, 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 definitely not. And that is, why I call it a dream to a network of communities, from a geographical dream to a network of communities. So, they are able to assist each other, but they are still individual entities.
Yeah.
And their main focus, specifically with regards to good governance within their towns or their communities, is up to them, and they look after their own.
I'm trying to understand it, Thomas, is the idea, you talk about safety and security is key to all of this, is the idea, because Afrikaners are also spread all over the country, every single region you'll find Afrikaners. So is the idea that through developing this sort of framework of cooperation based on safety and security, is it the hope that more Afrikaners will migrate to these communities to form some kind of a string of communities that one can call eventually a unit of some sort?
Yes, definitely. And if you look at the migration, and we call it in South Africa, we call it the semigration from all
Can I
other.
interrupt you for a moment, just for one single
Certainly.
moment? I need to just decline this call. I'm sorry about that.
No problem.
Okay, can you just pick up that question again from where I ended? Is the idea to create one kind of a unit?
No, it's definitely not to create one kind of a unit, but the semigration from Gauteng, from Natal, from the Free State, I think in a lesser degree, towards the Northern Cape or the Western Cape, are for two reasons. One is for safety, and the second is for good governance, which bring us to the whole issue of federalism, which I don't think we have that much time to discuss as a whole as well. But definitely to make it a safer living environment for people to be able to migrate towards these anchor communities.
Just touch on the word federalism now as well. My question there would be, what if we are to govern South Africa on the basis of federalism? What is the unit that we use there? Is it culture? Is it geography? How would one create South Africa into, how would you turn South Africa into federal states?
Yeah, it definitely has to do with geography. It's a geographical issue. In other words, it has to be one or more of the provinces that govern themselves, as it is basically done at this stage. But remember, you still have the central government institutions within these provinces. In other words, say for instance, Alan Winde in the Western Cape, he does not have control over the South African police services. That is they are run from a central government, from the ANC government itself, and he doesn't have any say on how policing is executed within his own province. So what it basically means is a federal state, all the state institutions, or the functions of all the state institutions, central government institutions, has to be delegated towards the province. In other words, the central government won't have any say over how policing is done, for instance, in the Western Cape, but it's definitely it's confined to a specific geographical area.
I'm always puzzled by this idea of federal state, or the question really is, what does the unit look like? Because I did a little bit of research in it, and maybe my research is not correct. You can help me out here, but my impression is that there is only one municipality in the entire South Africa I think Mossel Bay, if I'm correct, where you have a majority of white people. So there's not a single space of land when we measure it in terms of the smallest entity would be a municipality, where whites, I'm not even talking about Afrikaners, have some form of a majority.
Yeah. No, that definitely will have nothing to do with color or language. A federal state is about good governance. And at this stage, I think the province closest to becoming a federal state, if you can call it that, will be the Western Cape at this stage. Uh, because at this stage, it's a DA-run government, mostly DA-run government, and that is why it will be a good laboratory test to say, for instance, make it a federal state, but then everything will have to be delegated towards the Western Cape, the police, everything that has to do with the central government. Certain areas of state are delegated towards provinces, but the big ones are definitely not. If you look at the railways and harbours, for instance, now because you're sitting with the Western Cape, which has their own government, as does all the other provinces, but they don't have any say about what is happening on the harbours or in the harbours. They don't have any say on how the railways are run. That is done by the central government. In other words, what you have the central or the center of excellence, this pocket of excellence, but you have this fallouts of certain departments which are central government run, which are pathetic, and the provincial government has to cope with that, and they don't have any say on it. So how do you really run your province or your federal state if you don't have any say?
All I'm trying to say, though, is that there's no doubt in my mind that devolution of power seems to be to the benefit of all.
Absolutely.
Even if you look at Europe today, more power to the different states and less power to the European Union, if you want to make that comparison. The only thing that I will say to that, though, is that no matter where you go in South Africa, somebody said once South Africa has become like a scrambled egg. And how do you unscramble that egg is part of the question. But the other reality is just in terms of demographics, and we talk about an Afrikaner thuisland, Afrikaner home here. There is just nowhere in the entire country where you have a majority of white people, let alone only Afrikaner people, to create some kind of a reality on the ground. It takes me back to what Thabo Mbeki said during the time of the negotiations: create the animal and then we can talk. And outside Oranje, I can't see any creation of such an animal happening in South Africa based on the demographics of South Africa.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I'm not one that says let's kill the Volksstaat idea right here and then. We never know what might happen within the next 70, 80, 90 years. I think if there's institutions, organizations that wants to keep it alive, so be it. For the time being, we are more, as an organization, AfriForum Solidarity, we are more moving towards a network of communities. For many proponents of self-determination, the federalism idea has become the practical successor to the original Volksstaat idea. That's basically what it is about. Now, and on your question, the Volksstaat idea, has it failed? Is it really dead? I think definitely, as I said in my piece, it depends on how it's defined. If the Volksstaat is understood as an internationally recognized, independent Afrikaner state in the Northern Cape, then the project is arguably further from realization today than it was in 1994. In other words, it has slipped a little backwards. I don't know if you know the story of Sisyphus in the Greek mythology. Sisyphus he had a fallout with one of the main gods in the Greek gods, and so he was banned to the underworld, and his punishment, he had to roll a rock up from the bottom of a mountain up to the top of the mountain, and every time, almost when it's up on the top, it rolls back. And it's basically at this stage, that's the way that it looks. There's no political support from the national government, as we know, for such a development, and no formal negotiation process currently exists. So if it's understood as a growth of autonomous Afrikaner communities, as we are defining it, and I say if we are defining it, I speak about AfriForum and Solidarity, featuring our own schools, economies, civic institutions, security structures, and local government, I think then the picture looks different.
And that's what you call, in fact, functional
Yes.
self-determination, as I understand it.
Absolutely.
Which gave me the way I interpret it is, well, that's exactly what we've got right now. And then I spoke to Kali Kriel the other day, and I said to him, well, I have to say compliments to the Solidarity movement, to AfriForum, and to Solidarity, because you are actually fulfilling that task at the moment, and you are realizing that task in the moment. But I don't see out of that, then to get back to our discussion again, I don't see out of that anything that gives me or give those who yearn for the idea of a Volksstaat, a piece of land, geographical piece of land, piece of ground that we can say, yeah, we plant our flag, this is ours. I just simply do not see any possibility whatsoever for that, at least not as it is, as we understand South Africa and the demographic makeup of South Africa today. It seems like an impossible dream, and it remains an impossible dream.
I totally agree with you. I know it's that if you can go back again to 235, that section is there, and you can fall back onto 235. But to be able for that to succeed, the national government has to agree to that, and it's definitely, as it looks at this.
You say now, Thomas, the national government must agree to that. I would say the people must first want that.
Yeah.
And they must demonstrate that. And so far, I would say to you, and I think that was why I find Mbeki's statement so incredibly smart.
Yeah.
And let me add to that, if I may, and this is going to sound very cynical now, but I made a special note of this. Oranje was created in 1991. That's 35 years ago. And then from my viewpoint, only 3,000 citizens. That is, and that does not take away the fact that Oranje might be a very successful community. It does not take away that Oranje might be a beautiful community, for that matter, a lovely place to be in and to live in, etc. It doesn't take any of that away. But the fact is, it's only 3,000 people. And we're living in a time in which the only thing we hear from day to day to day is the horror of the collapse of South Africa. But that does not seem to result into any kind of new feeling for energy for, well, let's pack our bags and start anew, as what is in fact Oranje all about.
Yeah.
Am I too negative now?
Oh, no. I can completely agree with you. If you want to really define self-determination, and if you want to get to what you have just said, it is the freedom to shape and manage one's own community life without denying the rights of other communities, which is important, or necessarily undermining the unity of the state. And then, within that, to answer that, there's a combination of political, demographic, economic, international factors that collectively led to the transition of 1994. And I think the six most, if you want to measure what is happening at this stage and where this is moving, there's a few factors that must be included. Firstly, the demographics. The white population was a small minority in South Africa and is even more so at this stage. Then there's the internal political resistance, which is still there. It used to be big, but it's still there. International pressure, economic challenges, the security situation. And there's a lot to be said for the security situation and against the security situation. I mean, at that stage, the country was expecting or experiencing escalating political violence, states of emergency. You know about all of these. It was in your time. We're almost the same age as well. And then obviously leadership and negotiation. Okay, some people believe the transition was inevitable. Others believe that the military capability was sufficient to maintain the situation as it was pre-1994. And there's quite a number of other factors. But eventually, will we ever govern ourselves as a white minority within the next how many years? As I'm willing to say, within the next 50 years, no. Within the next 90 to 100 years, we can't be able to predict that.
That's it's a long-term dream that you're talking about.
Yes.
And if you look at the demographics, I think for every white baby born in South Africa, there's 4 or 5 black babies born in South Africa. We talk about massive African migration that is going to be very, very tough to push back at the end of the day. I know that Thabo Mbeki is a proponent of Pan-Africanism. I'm not even talking about the Julius Malemas of this world. So it just seems to me so unattainable at the end of the day for the simple reason of demographics. And the question I then ask myself, and a lot of people don't like it when I ask this question, is I look at newly minted organizations like Lex Libertas, for example, and I ask myself the question, what are you actually promising us at the end of the day? What's the end game here? Where are we going to? What is it? And then we hear, talk like, well, we are investigating, looking at, studying the other countries, similar examples, et cetera, to try to find that formula. And I think, well, we've been at it for 30 years.
Yeah.
And after 30 years, I seem to come to the conclusion, and I know a lot of people are now really angry when I say this, that it is what it is. And at the end of the day, I say to Kali Kriel the other day, well, I take my hat off for what you're doing, because what you're talking about is some kind of a safety buffer for Afrikaner culture and Afrikaner language within the restraints that you have, within the demographic realities of South Africa. So I guess back to what caught me about your article was the idea of, I don't know if you've coined the phrase, but it really rings very well, functional self-determination. And it will appear to me, and I'd like to get your view on this, and maybe you've said it already, what does that functional self-determination means? It means, as I just mentioned to you now, organizations such as AfriForum, such as the Solidarity Movement, who is actually building the muscle to protect the value of the Afrikaner culture, to protect the value of our language, to protect our identity. And in that sense, I think you're doing the job. I think you're doing very, very well indeed. And that, I think, is the promise of the future.
I definitely agree with you. That's why I wrote the article, and it has created a lot of discussions. As I say, I live and work and walk and run and buy in Orania on a daily basis, and it has created quite a discussion for the past number of days now. And I think there's, let me say, 70-80% of people, if not more, this is really a wild guess, are realizing this, that it must be a functional type of self-determination. You will always have, and that's the nice thing of freedom of speech. You will always have the people that says, we want the Volksstaat, and we want the physical Volksstaat within certain geographical borders. You have the people that are realistically saying, but guys, it will not happen. It cannot happen, not within the near future. As I say, if you had told me 30 years ago that Europe would look like it looks today with the influx of Muslims and all other types of ethnicities moving into Europe, France, Britain, and these. I would have said to you, no, you're talking nonsense. It can't be. It won't be. The French will be French, and the British will be British. And it's now a conglomerate of various languages, ethnic groups, religions, and so forth. And by the looks of it, in some of the countries, if you look at Britain, they're starting to push out the real British.
I've always maintained, I've lived in Europe now for a long time, I've always maintained it's a bit of a pendulum that swings. And there are moments where it becomes critically hot, and you have an uprise, and you have changes in politics, and politics swing more to the right, and it pushes back, and then it finds its way again. I believe in the ingenuity of humankind. I believe that we will all find our way. Within the South African context, I really truly believe, and once again, your comment on that is that if you take, and I've asked this question on a number of occasions to a number of people that I've spoken to, if you take away the nasties in South Africa, if you're able to change BEE, Black Economic Empowerment, into something that makes sense for all the people of South Africa, if you are to scrap the taking of land without compensation, and find a reasonable agreement, if we can do that with one another, if we can stop Julius Malema from singing "Kill the Boer, Kill the Farmer," if all of those things can successfully be had in South Africa, do you think that then that the multicultural, multiracial democracy in South Africa will succeed? And is that not the only way in the future for South Africa? And would you then be happy and satisfied to say, well, you know, I might have organizations, and I have the right to have organizations that protect the own, but I don't need that space of my own?
Yes, I definitely think so. But I do think that it is a process of evolution as well. If you look at the Romans, the Romans spoke Latin in Rome, and and where are they now? Latin is not spoken anymore, but they've evolved to the Italians, to the Spanish. All of these languages very close to each other, but they've split up, and they are different countries, different nations that evolved from one nation. I mean, the Japanese, 5,000 years ago, they are the oldest civilization, but they went through a lot of evolution as well. And I think South Africa is in that evolution phase, where we are moving from a one definite sphere to another. And I think we are making really headway with that. And, you know, with civic organizations, it's like AfriForum, like Solidarity, standing up and saying, guys, you aren't able to do this. We'll take it on ourselves to do it on our own. Even if we have to say it's the fourth government sphere, but we are doing it on our own.
Yeah, and I think you're doing it successfully. That's my view from abroad here, Thomas. You know, I have a lot of people on the left that are really criticizing me for talking to AfriForum and for talking to Solidarity, and I'm being called a sellout and all sorts of, you know, nasty names and things like that. I say that my view from abroad is that most of us are happy to live together in that melting pot. Given that we can live in safe spaces and hopefully have a government that where service delivery is real service delivery, but that within that multicultural democracy, call it the rainbow dream if you want to, go back to that as well, it will be organizations like AfriForum and Solidarity that will become, and I think it's also a natural evolution, the caretakers, call it the custodians of Afrikaner culture and values. And that seems to be a natural product, a natural evolution.
Absolutely. True.
Thomas van Dalen, Chairman of AfriForum Training Forum, thank you very much for talking to me.
Thank you very much, Johan. It was a pleasure being on the program and racking my brain here.